Hey guys, welcome back. Happy Tuesday. Tisha here, back for a chapter reading of The Polygamist Daughter by Anna LeBaron. Go ahead and do me a favor and hit the like button as we jump into this video. Chapter 17. I was now in fourth grade. And a few months into the school year, my older half-brother Ed surprised us with a visit. He took all of us kids to Woolworths and bought each one of us a new outfit with money he'd earned working at one of our family's Reliance appliance locations in Houston. I remember Woolworth. I don't know if it's still around, but when we lived in New Jersey, that was like one of the places that my mom loved to go to send stuff, back home overseas. So I'm hearing this and I'm getting like this nostalgia. I'm getting this nostalgia from Woolworth. A few weeks later, he surprised us again when he came back with a U-Haul truck and we packed up our things to move near him. Not all of us were heading to the same destination. Teresa and Yolanda moved to Phoenix to work for an appliance business there, but Rosemary accompanied us to Houston where she opened a new remote location of Reliance Appliance. We lived in a yellow two-story house on the Gulf Freeway in Houston. The upstairs level housed the kitchen, dining room, and bedrooms. Another large room up a few steps served as a living area, furnished with a shabby couch and several beds that became one of the makeshift places for the girls to sleep. The lower level felt like a typical basement space with an outside entrance. Mom was going to use this place to sell appliances too, as another remote location of Reliance. Okay, so how great is this place that they're creating all of these remote locations? And I'm feeling myself, as one of you all said in the comment section, which I wish I remember your username, but every time they move, there's some anxiety there because it's like, okay, what now? So here we are with another move, thinking that this is about to be some great booming business. She's in the fourth grade. What's about to happen? The men divided the inventory of used appliances among the various locations. I remember thinking that Dan Jordan and his family must have been devastated by the mass exodus of cheap labor. Maybe now his kids would actually need to work as hard as we had. With the move to Houston, we enjoyed greater stability than we'd ever known. Okay, good, great. We were reunited with Mark and Lillian, who oversaw the main Reliance appliance store, and Mom actually made a decent wage working for them out of our home. She had enough money to buy normal food for our school lunches, a bologna and cheese sandwich, a few Oreos, and a handful of Doritos, packed in individual plastic baggies that she reused to make them last. So here we go from them having to have bean sandwiches to her actually having what other kids were already receiving, which is what you would consider a traditional lunch. Great. Happy so far for this move. Mom put the baggies into paper lunch bags with our names written on them. We must be rich. For the first time that I could remember, I didn't dread eating my lunch with my classmates. The things you don't think about. I definitely had to adjust to a new school, though. I had started my school year in Denver in the fourth grade, but here in Houston, they placed me in the sixth grade based on my age. What in the world? To jump from the fourth to the sixth, there are so many key concepts that she is missing out on. How is she expected to keep up? I was way behind the other students in my class, and I dropped from making mostly A's and B's to making B's, C's, and even D's. That shamed me to my core. One day, my teacher, Mr. Gentry asked me to remain in the room while he dismissed the rest of the class for lunch. What did I do? I stood by his desk, nervously twirling a lock of hair around my index finger, waiting for him to finish recording something in his notebook. Anna, I'm not going to waste my time getting to the point. Are you having trouble seeing the blackboard? Sometimes I notice you squinting. I blushed and stared at the floor. Listen, needing glasses is nothing to be ashamed of. Believe me, when you get the right prescription, it will make all the difference in the world. He smiled and tapped the side of his own glasses. It will help you learn, and it will help you do better in school. I'm writing a note for your mother. Will you please give this to her tonight? Yes, Mr. Gentry. I nodded and then fled his classroom, mortified at the thought of having to wear glasses in public. I don't have to give Mom the note. She'll never know about this conversation with Mr. Gentry. But my desire to do better in school made me change my mind. When I got home from school, I took the note from the back pocket of my jeans, unfolded it, and placed it on the table in front of her. My teacher says I need glasses. I'm having trouble seeing the board. He thinks that might be why my grades are so bad. She looked at the note, moving her lips as she read each word. Well, I guess I need to make you an appointment with an eye doctor. A couple of days later, she picked me up from school and drove me to an optometrist's office around the corner from the appliance store. A man with bushy black eyebrows directed me to a chair in front of a giant machine and began moving different dials. With each new adjustment, I could see much better until finally I was able to read the tiniest letters on the eye chart with ease. Mom helped me pick out frames we could afford. I thought they made me look hideous, so I refused to wear them at school. I confided to Lillian how much I hated wearing my glasses, and she urged me to tell Mom, but I felt bad that my mother had spent so much money on me. Sometimes, out of desperation, I pulled my glasses out of the case tucked into my desk, slipped them on quickly to read the board, and then put them back, hoping no one saw me. By the time I had to start wearing glasses, I think I was in the 11th grade, and it was because I was in front of the computer so much, and because I have a lazy eye. But in my day, glasses weren't, like a bad thing. Like, they weren't the way that they used to look. Like, I've looked at pictures of my mom, and my mom has to have her glasses in order to see things. And my mom has some thick Coke bottle glasses. So I'm hearing her talk, and I'm thinking at the time period, and I think that it could be embarrassing. Now you got kids like my son. My son will wear glasses that don't have anything but the blue light just because he likes having glasses on his face. The good news is I only got to wear my glasses at night when I'm driving, and if I'm in front of the computer for a long time. But the point is, because I'm rambling, that it's come a long way. And it's sad that even though the glasses were helping her, because of the way that they made her look, she was ashamed to wear them. I took advantage of the Park Place Public Library, stopping there on my way home from school each day to check out books. It became a refuge for me and broadened my world. I had never lost my interest in photography, and from the wages I received from working at the store on weekends, I quickly upgraded my first camera to a Kodak 110 Instamatic. After finding the cheapest place within walking distance to buy film and get my pictures developed, I began regularly adding more photos of my classmates and siblings to the album Kathleen had given me for my birthday. One morning, as I ate my Corn Bran cereal, I read to my mom an offer on the back of the box for a Polaroid camera. I knew that kind of camera was way out of my price range, but I longed for it anyway. Mom secretly began saving proofs of purchase from the cereal boxes mailed in the form and surprised me with the camera on my 13th birthday. That's so sweet. I couldn't believe I had received such an expensive gift, one that someone knew I wanted so badly. I felt as if it magically appeared because we had never been able to afford such luxuries before. Because mom operated the appliance business out of our house, I occasionally answered the phone to take down information from people who wanted us to come pick up their used appliances. I've been listening to the others take these calls for years, so I knew exactly what to do. On one of our pre printed cards, I wrote out the person's name, address, phone number, and details about the appliance, including the type, make, and model number. After I hung up the phone, I looked up the address in a big Mapsco book and located the corresponding square on the giant grid map of Houston that hung on the wall. Once I had taken several calls and pinpointed the pickup locations, I could plot out a route for the driver that would take him to all of the houses without any backtracking. I became skilled with maps and directions, both giving them and getting them to places with directions someone had given me. I quickly memorized the Houston highways and streets. One afternoon, mom had to run an errand and left me in charge. Minutes later, the doorbell rang, and when I opened the door, a middle aged man was standing there. "Welcome to Reliance Appliance," I said. "Hi there, little lady. I'm looking for a clothes dryer. Is there who could help me?" "Sure, come on in. I'm Anna, and I can help you." He studied me curiously. "You can? Huh?" "Yes, sir. We have several dryers I can show you." I led him downstairs to the section of the house and pointed out a few features of the dryers we had in stock at the time. I knew exactly what to say, including the pros and cons of the different makes and models and the guarantee we'd offer on every appliance sold. Before mom got back, I had sold my first appliance. I was busy writing up the receipt when she returned from her errand. I'll never forget the shock but pleased look on her face when she walked into the office. I had such fun that day. Lillian and Mark cared about us and wanted good things for us, and they did everything they could to make it happen. Lillian was the daughter of Delfina, who was Mexican and my father's first wife. Though I didn't have many encounters with Delfina, when I was a young child, that I remember that when she was around, she used to wield her power over us by saying, "I'm the first wife. I can spank you if you don't obey." In actuality, Delphina never really had any power. My mom was the one with power. Delphina tried to exercise control, but when we learned the truth, we knew we didn't have to obey her. My half sister and her husband also cared deeply about educating my siblings and me. Since Lillian had experienced firsthand many of the same educational deficits we had from being moved so many times when she was growing up, she resolved to see her younger siblings have a better education than she had. Mark and Lillian read an article about Accelerated Christian Education, ACE. It's either U.S. News and World Report or Time. Intrigued and impressed by the description of the Christian-based church-run school curriculum, they attended the training in Louisville, Texas, with the intention of starting a school for us kids. I can't remember. Is the ACE similar to the stuff that Graham used? No, we've heard so many different names, I couldn't remember. Anyway, let me continue. At this time, the two of them were fringe members of my dad's group, but they wouldn't separate themselves completely because they were afraid for their lives if they left the group. In order to have an ACE school, you needed to have a church established first. Mark and Lillian obtained a 501c3 status for their church. When that step was done, Mark and Lillian remodeled their garage and converted it into a classroom, complete with individual cubicles for us, offices, scoring stations, and other furnishings based on the instructions they received. We worked together enthusiastically as a family to make this exciting project happen. When the schoolroom was ready, they pulled a dozen or so of us teenagers out of public school to begin this curriculum. Each school day would begin with opening exercises, a Bible sword drill, and prayer before we would go to our cubicles and learn at our own pace. That was part of what had attracted Mark and Lillian to this curriculum because all of us had gaps in our education. It was impossible to have a one room schoolhouse approach. But with a self taught, self paced curriculum, each of us could pick up at the level we needed to. Lillian was always there if any of us had questions. On Sundays, the church service mostly followed the Mormon format established by the group I'd grown up with one interesting twist. Mark assigned each of his kids a different denomination to research, which involved interviewing a local clergy member. Each week, one of us gave a report during the church service on a particular religion. I had the Seventh day Adventists. I'm very familiar with Seventh day Adventists. I used to be one. My mother and a lot of my family still are Adventists. So I'm intrigued to hear what she has to say. Who intrigued me because they worshiped on Saturday instead of Sunday. The night before starting our new home based school plan, I sat on mom's bed and rubbed her aching feet. She asked, "What do you think about this new approach to school?" I'm so excited. My mind flitted briefly to the teasing and the bullying I'd experienced at nearly every public school I'd ever attended. I think I'll do better because I'll be able to work at my own pace in each subject. I also think you'll do better if you start wearing your glasses. I hung my head. Lillian must have spoken to Mom about my refusal to wear my glasses. Anna, Mom lifted my chin. You are so smart. And I know you can do really well in school, but you have to be able to see to learn. But I hate those glasses. My eyes look gigantic in them. No one else has to wear them, so they don't understand. I understand about not loving how you look. Do you think I'm 100% happy with my appearance? I shrugged. Well, I'm not. For starters, I like to be about 5 or 6 inches taller, and I like to have thinner hips and thighs. I've been doing well at Weight Watchers, but I still have a way to go before I reach my goal weight. I smiled as I thought about Mom faithfully attending her Weight Watchers meetings, the only thing she did outside of the group. She ate a lot of fish to help her weight loss efforts, and none of us could stand the smell of it when she cooked it. But we can't help things like our eyesight, Mom continued. That's how God made you. And you have a choice tomorrow. You can refuse to wear your glasses and suffer the consequences in your grades, or you can choose to wear them and see just how well you can do academically. She brushed a loose strand of hair off my forehead and kissed it lightly. The next morning at school, as I joined the dozen or so other students, I sat down at my school desk in Mark and Lillian's garage, reached into my bag, and pulled out my glasses. I gazed at the shiny new classroom. I could see across the room now. After that, I wore my glasses every day. Good for her. Good for her. Chapter 18. Dressed in my Sunday best, a wrinkled plaid skirt and dingy white blouse, I padded across the concrete floor in the appliance showroom to the phone that rang so loudly it echoed off the bare walls. I could smell that something had been burned in the kitchen upstairs. The person in charge of making the toast had probably been distracted and forgotten about the bread under the broiler in the oven. I've never used the under part of my oven. I just thought about that. I've done it in other ovens, but the things you think about while reading. Anyway, I want to go toast some bread and have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So random. That's what I want. The things that I think about, y'all forgive me. Where am I at? See, this is what happened. Okay. It was August 16th, 1981, a memorable Sunday for me because Mark and Lillian had recently promoted me from appliance cleaner at the warehouse to receptionist at the Gulf Freeway location of Reliance Appliance, aka Our House. Anna can answer phones. She has a pleasant demeanor, and she thinks quickly, Mark told Lillian. I couldn't believe any of the adults in my family noticed me, let alone would say such nice things about me. I assumed the adults around me thought about me the same way I felt about myself, as nothing but a nuisance and a bother. I hate that she felt that way about herself, but a lot of that is because of the things that she experienced while she wasn't with her mom. I think if she spent more time with her mother and she wasn't mistreated by so many people, then she wouldn't feel that way. But apparently, Mark and Lillian had enough faith in me for this new responsibility. After I thanked them, I silently thanked a God I didn't actually have a relationship with. We still didn't talk about Jesus or reference him in conversation, but I was definitely becoming more aware of spiritual things and the basis of Christian faith. Slowly, I was beginning to put the pieces together. A couple of times a week, Mark ran ads in a local newspaper called The Green Sheet. My favorite ad pictured a pirate with the headline, "Wanted Dead or Alive. Reliance Appliance will pick up your unused appliances, working or not." So when the phone rang that morning, it was perfectly natural for me to answer the call. We had only one phone line for both business matters and personal calls, but we always answered it as a business phone until we knew who was on the other end. I picked up the phone and was about to begin my usual friendly greeting. "Reliance Appliance, how may I help you?" But before I could utter a word, I heard a familiar deep voice. An involuntary shiver snaked its way up my spine. Dan Jordan. Although I hadn't thought of him for quite a long time, his voice immediately brought back my intense loathing for this man. In that split second, I realized that Mom had picked up one of the phones upstairs the moment I had and was on the line too. I knew I should hang up or identify myself. After all, Dan Jordan hadn't called to talk to me. In the span of a millisecond, my curiosity and obedient nature began wrestling. Why was Dan calling on a Sunday morning? Shouldn't he be getting ready to go to church? I hope they don't have to go back. Usually, he was all business or all religion, depending on what the situation warranted. What would Mom say to him? I couldn't imagine she really liked this man who mistreated and verbally abused the wives and children of Orville LeBaron, but he was in a position of authority over us, so she dutifully gave him the attention he demanded. My curiosity won out, and I stayed on the extension to listen to the conversation. I covered the mouthpiece of the phone with my hand so that neither of them would hear me breathing. Still, I could feel guilt and fear rising in my gut. I wondered what horrible punishment Dan would order if he found out I was eavesdropping. "Anime, you're my first call to a member of the family. Orville was found dead in his prison cell." Dan relayed the news without any emotion, as though he called to tell my mom about the weather in Denver that day. I suppressed a gasp. My father's dead. Even though I scarcely knew him and had only seen him a few times in my life, I was sad. With Dan's matter-of-fact declaration, any opportunity for a relationship with my father was gone forever. Not that I had actually believed he might be capable of that. After all, many dads with only 2 or 3 children struggle to make time for their families. Imagine trying to maintain relationships with more than 50 kids scattered all over Texas, Colorado, California, and Mexico. The silence on the phone hung heavy to the point I could hear the blood pounding in my ears. I tightened my grip over the mouthpiece for fear that Dan might hear my short, panicked breaths. Finally, Mom spoke. "What? Are you sure?" Her voice sounded far away. I wondered if she had dropped the receiver. "Yes, I'm sure. His attorney called me a few minutes ago." I was still mulling over what this news would mean for our family when Mom's voice interrupted my thoughts. How can this be? He was the one mighty and strong who was supposed to usher in the millennium. It's true, Anna Mae. The assistant warden called Orville's attorney as soon as they found the body. The attorney didn't want the family to hear about it on the news. Here's the interesting thing, right? How could this be because of who he's supposed to be? Yet they went through all these great pains of hiding him and moving him from place to place and doing all these other things. So there's a lot that comes with this that I don't think that they've ever thought of. But once again, when this is all you know, what can I say? Mom let out a heavy sigh from deep within. What happened? Was he killed? Well, it's not outside the realm of possibility, Dan said. But they say he suffered a massive heart attack, that he died instantly. A cell block guard discovered him during roll call. There's some talk that it could have been an orchestrated murder at the hands of someone hired by the LDS Church, but we'll never be able to prove anything, even if that's what happened. Her next words were barely above a whisper. I just can't believe it. He's just so... Ervil? Dead? She coughed, then cleared her throat. What do I need to do? Though I continued listening as she and Dan discussed arrangements, I can't recall another word they said. After the two of them finished talking and hung up, I quietly hung up the phone. I stared at the blank wall thinking, how will the rest of the family react to this startling news? Mom's voice rang throughout the household. It's time for church. I need everyone in the cars now. I could hear the strain and urgency in her voice. I broke out of my trance and headed out the door. My siblings and I got into two vehicles to drive to Lillian and Mark's house. About 30 minutes away. Even though I was bursting inside, I knew better than to say anything. My lips were zipped, but I felt anxious, wondering what would happen to us. I knew that Mom was waiting to tell everyone when we were all together. She was somber, never taking her eyes off the road, obviously sorting through all the implications of Dad's unexpected death. When we arrived and walked into the converted garage that transformed from a schoolroom to a church on Sundays, it was filled with the usual volume of talking and laughing. I looked down the hallway from the garage to the kitchen, and I could see Mom deep in conversation with Mark and Lillian. Mom held Lillian's hands in hers, and Mark kept nodding his head as Mom spoke, all three of them stone-faced. Then Mark and Mom took turns hugging Lillian before the three of them headed into the garage and took their seats in front. Moments later, after the last few stragglers had arrived, Mark, the leader of our Houston faction of the cult, announced to the group, Anna Mae just received word that Ervil died during the night. Prison guards found him in his cell this morning. They believe he had a heart attack. After a few initial gasps, people began whispering to the others seated near them. Since I didn't know exactly how I should respond, I figured I could take my cue from other family members. I glanced around the room to gauge people's reactions. There were some tears, sobs, perhaps even wailing. I was still in such shock from overhearing the news just a half hour earlier that I was swirling in my own anxious world. I bit my fingernails, and if I did shed a tear, it was out of empathy for my mother rather than grief. Though my mom was Dad's fourth wife, she was the one listed on his death certificate. The state of Utah needed someone to take possession of the body, someone who had enough money to pay for something other than a pauper's grave. Mom had somehow managed to save money through the years, so she paid for Dad's body to be transported from Utah to Houston. Money was pooled for him to be buried, and a grave marker was ordered bearing the words "Beloved Father" above my dad's name, date of birth, and date of death. On the day of the funeral, my sister and I giggled and laughed as we were getting dressed until Mom sternly admonished us for not showing the proper reverence for the occasion. I get it. It's a funeral. But for those young ladies, they didn't have the connection to their father. And I also think it's kind of hard to tell people how to grieve. I think about, the funerals that I've been to in recent years. And there are points where there may be a little bit of smiling or laughter, more so not before the funeral, but after, because you're talking about, the things that are happy memories of the person. So I don't think it's necessarily right to come down on people for not showing, the emotions that you think they should show when it comes to that. That's my thoughts. Reporters showed up for the service in hopes of interviewing family members, but Mom angrily asked them to leave. Although I don't remember seeing him, I'm sure that Dan Jordan was there among the large group of family mourners assembled. After the service, we drove to the cemetery for the graveside service, led by a police escort on motorcycles. As I stood by the grave, I did my best to stand still and be respectful, but a foreboding question taunted me. What's going to happen to us? I looked around at my family. My mom was in front, crying softly, certainly shell-shocked and sad, but remaining stoic, whereas other sister wives were weeping and wailing loudly. Most of my siblings seemed detached, wanting it to all be over with. Celia was the exception. She sobbed the most, grieving the loss of our father. Kathleen's emotions would catch up with her later when she realized that no one was taking care of us. When the cemetery workers finished filling in the grave, I placed flowers on the small mound of earth, with others following behind me. Things returned to our version of normal pretty quickly, although I could see that at times Mom seemed lost. Dan Jordan was in charge now, and she needed to take instructions from him. How that would affect all of us would become clear over time. For now, we were no longer on our knees praying every night for Dad to be released from jail. Once the initial somberness of his death passed, the collective mood of our family seemed lighter. Within days of the funeral, I attended my first ever wedding. While my father was in prison, Raina had visited him and courageously announced she was divorcing him. Because she was never married to him legally, there were no documents to be filed. Raina had fallen in love with John, an outsider. It was a new experience for me to watch a man and woman holding hands and being affectionate to one another, not to mention laughing and flirting. It stirred up longings within me to have that kind of relationship in my life someday. So she wasn't even accustomed to seeing her parents be affectionate towards each other. Her mom has all these children and she didn't witness that. Then y'all wonder why these girls are so confused and so distraught when they are told that they're gonna, be married to somebody or something like that. There's so much that they just don't know. Chapter 19. In addition to working at Reliance Appliance, Megan, June, Virginia, and I were also permitted to babysit for people outside the family. All of us girls were experts in childcare. After all, we looked after the babies of our older sisters and the many sister wives since we were in grade school. We knew how to feed, change, clothe, bathe, and most of all, keep the children entertained. I especially enjoyed watching the baby of a couple who lived in a mobile home nearby because the baby was well behaved. The couple paid me well, and the job also offered perks like watching TV and helping myself to snacks while I was there. The Grants played in a band, so I stayed there until late into the night. Their home wasn't anything like the homes I'd seen and lived in. Mrs. Grant had gone to great lengths to decorate the trailer with cute furnishings and tasteful art and decor. On many occasions after I put the baby to bed, I wandered around their house snooping. Dozens of family photos hung on the walls of the living room and the long hallway to the bedroom. The couple looked so happy in all of them, from their wedding pictures to a photo of them holding their newborn. In my mind, they embodied everything I considered normal, though I never experienced normal to have a truly accurate picture. The couple had a waterbed, which they allowed me to sleep on after I put the baby to bed. What a luxurious experience. They must be rich, I thought. I ran my hands over the coordinating furniture, took in the bright, warm colors, and fantasized about someday having a home and a family like this. Pictures on a wall, happiness, things that added character to the room, loving, affection, stuff that she hasn't seen in her household. Now, there's been love there, but how often did she experience that? December arrived, and the weather in Houston remained relatively mild. One particular Saturday, Mrs. Grant had asked me to come over early in the afternoon to babysit while she and her husband went out for dinner. I took my school notebook with me to take advantage of the peace and quiet while the baby slept. At 7:15, I heard the Grants' car pull up in the driveway. I quickly rubbed my eyes and gathered my things as they came in the door. "How did everything go?" Mrs. Grant asked before she handed me several dollar bills rolled up together. "Great. Are you excited about the upcoming Christmas holiday and putting up your Christmas tree?" Mr. Grant asked, his deep voice booming in the relative quiet. "My family doesn't celebrate Christmas, but even if we did, we couldn't afford a tree." The couple exchanged glances before Mr. Grant cleared his throat. We're getting a new artificial tree this year. Would you like our old one? You can have our decorations too." "Oh, that's so nice." Mrs. Grant chimed in. "I've decided to get all new ones this year." I swallowed, letting their words sink in. "Are you sure?" I couldn't believe our good fortune. "Of course, we'd really like for your family to have them." Mrs. Grant hugged me. "Anything for our favorite babysitter." I smiled and thanked them and then ran all the way home. I stopped for a moment to catch my breath before going into the house. Hiram and Manuel were playing cards on the showroom floor. "Where's Mom?" "She's cooking dinner." I hustled into the kitchen, my heart pounding, both from running and the excitement of possibly having our first Christmas tree. Mom was taking garlic bread out of the oven, and the aroma filled the tiny kitchen. A pot of water was boiling on the stove for pasta. Suddenly, I remembered my mission. "Mom, can we get a Christmas tree?" "No, they cost too much." I stared with that I'd started with that question simply to trap her. I knew if she went with the excuse that the tree cost too much, she wouldn't have a defense when I posed the next question. "What if I told you we can have one for free?" I'd say, "How can we do that? You know the Grants the couple I babysit for?" Mom nodded as she poured the cooked noodles into the plastic strainer in the sink. "Well, they're throwing away their old Christmas tree, and they said we could have it. So we get a tree and it's free. Oh, and their old decorations too." "Are we going to celebrate Christmas?" said Celia from the doorway. I had no idea that Christmas marked the celebration of the birth of Jesus. Acknowledging him never entered into the equation. I did know about Santa Claus, though. I turned and grinned at her. "What do you think, Mom? Can we get it and put it up in the house?" I paused for effect. "Please?" Mom wiped her hands on her apron, leaned her head to one side and sighed. "I don't know what I'm going to do with you, Anna, but yes, you may go get the tree after dinner. We may as well take it if it's free." Celia, Hiram, and I rushed through dinner. Then the three of us dragged the tree and carried the box of decorations from the Grant's house to ours and set it up in an upstairs room. We spent the rest of the evening making popcorn and stringing it onto thread for the tree. The next afternoon, Mom brought home a couple of strands of lights. We laughed and sang Christmas carols while we wrapped the lights around the branches and painstakingly placed the decorations, silver tinsel, and rennet green balls on the tree. As I became an adult, I understood why, when you have an artificial tree, tinsel isn't fun. I didn't get it before, especially because when I was young, the tree wasn't at my mom's house. It was at my grandma's house. So I'm listening to this and I'm thinking about the memories that were created around the tree, even the ones that I've created with my son, but I'm just saying. Once we finished, Mom found an extension cord to plug in the lights. "Here, Anna, since you found us the tree, you get to do the honors." As I inserted the plug into the extension cord, Mom turned out the overhead lights. The room was transformed with the soft glow from the Christmas lights. The beauty and calm of the scene took my breath away. I didn't care that my dad was dead. I didn't care that we still had Beverly and Mary Lou's kids living with us. I didn't care that I had to wear hideous glasses to read the board at school. Everything paled in comparison to the serenity of that moment. The first Christmas celebration was memorable for other reasons, too. We actually had money to buy real presents for each other. We had saved from the money we earned at the warehouse helping the sister wives and outside babysitting jobs. All of us siblings planned and schemed, both together and separately, about all the things we wanted to buy each other. I specifically remember all of us girls pooling our money to buy Beverly's son Sean a navy blue velour robe that we had seen in an ad from Palais. Oh, no, I'm saying that wrong. Palais Royal. I think it cost $29 on sale. With so many of us living under the same roof, the mound of presents under the tree grew higher and wider during the weeks before Christmas. I also got to witness true love in action. My 18-year-old sister Kathleen was deeply in love with her boyfriend Jim, who lived in Denver. He was not a member of our church, which made Mom and others in leadership determined to make Kathleen break it off. Despite everyone's attempts to separate them, Kathleen had secretly kept in touch with him by paying her friends to let her use their family's phone to call him. Good for her being able to make her own decisions and not allow them to deter her. I hope it works out for Kathleen. I don't even know the young man, but I hope it works out. Ever since we moved to Houston, she and Jim had written faithfully to each other. If Kathleen knew she wouldn't be home in time to pick up the mail before Mom, she asked me to check it in case there was a letter from Jim. If there was, I picked it out of the pile and left the rest for Mom to retrieve. I obliged because I thought the idea of their love was so romantic. I was impressed when Kathleen boldly invited Jim to join our family for Christmas. Even more unbelievable, Jim accepted the invitation. He arrived 2 days before Christmas to stay for a long weekend. Mom didn't want him to come at all. Mom and the other sister wives were afraid of Kathleen and Jim being together. They didn't want anyone from the outside to come in because they feared losing control of us kids and our close family. Your prophet is gone, but here you are still trying to control things and not let these people just be. Interesting. She and Kathleen argued about it, but my sister stood her ground. Seeing the two of them together impressed on me what young love looked like. Other than Raina's recent marriage, the other marriages in our family had all been arranged. So getting to witness the affection and closeness of two young people truly in love broadened my outlook. Their relationship, along with Raina and John's, gave me hope that one day I might have the same thing. By Christmas Eve, all of the presents were wrapped and the pile took up more than half of the large room. We girls thoroughly enjoyed the look on Sean's face when he opened his gift. He tried on the robe immediately and raved about how comfortable it was. In fact, he wore it all morning as he played Carlos on the piano and for most of the rest of the day. As he played carols, I don't know where I got Carlos from, carols on the piano and for most of the rest of the day. Amid the chaos of opening presents, I watched Jim quietly give Kathleen her Christmas gift, a silver necklace with an eagle pendant. After he closed the clasp around her neck, she never took off that necklace, not even to bathe. As we spent time giving and sharing that joyous Christmas morning, I felt a deep sense of contentment, an unfamiliar feeling to be sure. That day was probably the happiest I'd ever experienced during my entire life. My eyes were opening up wider to the outside world that had been hidden from my view. I absolutely, and I know you all have said it as well, I absolutely enjoy the way that she writes. I love the fact that although there have been some rough things in here to hear, that she has us going, as some of you all have said, through all of the feels without it being so heavy. Now there's heavy parts and we're still not, complete, but I'm enjoying this. You all let me know what you thought about this chapter. I'll be back on Thursday for another chapter reading. Do me a favor, as I said earlier, and hit the like button. We are on the road to 5,000, and I hope to get there sooner than later. Thank you guys for rocking with me. I appreciate you. Until next time.